Sabre Station, even as far as Holland. So good afternoon and welcome to Klein Foundation Education Matters. I am joined here today with Dr. Pear, Dr. Delroy Pear, who is going to be the moderator today with me for this esteemed panel that we have. The panelists here are experts and we expect a great conversation. If you're here with us today, it's because you too believe that we are to work together against abusive leadership. So with that being said, the panel today, the purpose of this panel, which is themed Challenging Abusive Leadership. The purpose of this panel is to bring awareness, continued awareness, because we have persons in the community who's doing the work, and we are to continue to do the work because many times we recognize that those persons who are the abusers expect that when something comes up about being abusive, eventually it dies down. So we are going to keep the pressure, keep the work going, all groups, all persons together. The next purpose is not just awareness, but what can we do? What is it that we can do when we identify, or if we know somebody that's being abused, what steps should we take? Now, while I am here doing this, I have these experts who have been for many years doing this work, but I also have for the very first time Klein Foundation on a panel discussion. We have a support group, virtual support group. So there's persons right now virtually that will be here to support any persons that may want to inbox them directly in case you know of someone that may be being abused. Or if you just have a question, it could be for yourself, it could be for someone else. You get that opportunity to support within that group. And I will ask those persons to, say hi to us, hello, which organization you're from, in the chat so that we know that you're there to share that. And we will go to the chat now and then. So we are going to start off with the introduction of our panelists. And we're going to start right on this end with Miss Cassandra Richardson, who will give us a brief introduction, even though all of our panelists wears many hats. Today they are here specifically for this topic.
Yes. Thank you so much for the invitation and for being here, viewers. My name is Cassandra Richardson. Currently I am the Director of Victim Support Services. I'm a social worker, and I deal a lot with different persons in the community, especially persons that work and that encounter problematic workspaces, let's call it that, and help them build skill and voice in how to respond.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Ms. Bryson.
Good afternoon, all viewers, panelists. I'm Aldine Bryson Pontiflet. I'm an educator. I can't put X or Y because we remain an educator. I've always been a community worker. I've been the president of Safe Haven for 15 years, and so I'm not active in Safe Haven now, but I've been through the ropes with domestic violence, and looking forward to a fruitful discussion and interaction also with you, the public.
All right, thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Brenda Maynard. I'm the co-author, along with my co-author Rosalind Douglas, of a book called The Dark Side of Leadership. Actually, it is shining the light on the dark side of leadership. I am a youth leader, so I'm very much involved in the youth. I currently work at the Parliament of St. Martin as a section head of administration and facility, and I'm very much involved in the structuring of our youths to become better citizens in our community.
Thank you so much. So we're going to move over on this side to Ms. Claire Elshot-Aventurin.
Well, good afternoon to everyone. I am Claire Elshot-Aventurin, ex-president of the Windward Islands Teachers Union, and right now vice president, and I'm also an educator, has been for 46 years, and basically I have other caps that, in sports and in the community that you have to tassel them around different times. But I'm very much involved also with the youth, especially with education, youths that come to the island, not necessarily born here, but stream in here and needs an education. So basically, I'm still active in all fields, in unionism and in education.
Yes, thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aishida Cecilia. I am the legal advisor to the Ombudsman. I've been working at the Bureau Ombudsman for the last 6 years, and I have in total about 12 years experience working for government basically in and around legal affairs.
Good afternoon. My name is George Pantoflet, former Member of Parliament of St. Martin, former Member of Parliament of Nevis Antilles, State Secretary of Health of Nevis Antilles. But all those cabinets didn't assist me today with the discuss. I believe that when my fellow panelists bring forward the points, it will assist me in discerning and assessing what is taking place and see how I can input, because I think that the subject matter is very broad, but also it is of extreme importance that those who are viewing, those who are listening, that they also pose their questions to see if we can definitely come up with a conclusion, a solution to the issue. It is very easy to point out different things, but what we need is solutions to these ills. You have what you call a perpetrator, and you have the victim. I think it's important we find a way in order to give the victim more support in order to deal with these matters.
Indeed. Thank you so much to the panelists. I do want the audience to know as well that we have in our house as well Miss Sharon Canegita from WITSU PSU. So she will join us shortly, and so we're going to get right into it. So Dr. Pierre, we're going to ask you to share with our audience, but before you do that, we want to tell the audience this. We have been expressing different ways on the radio and going on social media to express. If you're sitting here now and you're wondering what is it that you can do, you can share the live. Information is so important. So if you don't know what else to do, this is what you can do. Share it so people get the information. We're going to put up phone numbers later on as well, where you'll be able to see the contact information where you can call someone, tell someone, here are the numbers for these institutions that can help. So we're going to get into Dr. Pierre to tell us a little bit about leadership.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Boston. All of us have been part of an organization, and in all organizations there's a certain amount of leadership, there's a level of leadership. Leadership have evolved over the years. There has been authoritarian leadership to more collaborative leadership that we kind of are moving towards right now. There are also various models of leadership where we talk about things like situational leadership or transformational leadership, all these types of models of leadership. But it always boils down to one thing. The leader has to have the ability to influence the follower towards a certain type of goal. And therefore, it requires a certain amount of trust and a certain amount of relationship with the followers. And because of that, this is where we are going to begin when we talk about this, to place it in the context that we're speaking about. So I want Ms. Maynard to speak about, because most times we talk about the fact that the good leaders, heroic leaders, those type of leaders that can move organization forward. But I want, in the context of relationship and trust within an organization, to talk about, for you to talk about the dark side of leadership that you have expressed in your book.
Thank you, Dr. Pierre. One of the things that I realize as a leader is that leadership does not necessarily mean that you have followers. It's a walk that's supposed to be done together. And leaders should then pull the persons who they're leading along with them. So in our book, we don't use the terminology followers, because even as a leader, I am following someone else. And I'm even following the ones who are walking this path with me. One of the things that I realized in my experience as a leader, I have done it over the Caribbean, have done it on a vast platform, is that the higher you get in leadership, the more lonelier it gets. And it becomes then protecting your mental capacity as a leader, and to be able to then produce or have your goals and your vision, because leadership is just getting the buy-in from another set of people of what your goals actually are. So in our book, The Dark Side of Leadership, Shining the Light, we talk about the darkness. We talk about those areas. So we have the covert underminer, we have the open underminer, and we have self-sabotage. So that's the dark part. And with open underminers, those are persons that you actually know they want to derail your goals. They just openly are protesting anything you do. But my favorite part of the book, and we have a picture of a sniper, and I really think that's a really powerful picture, because the covert underminer comes and blindsides you, because it can be that person who is your biggest cheerleader but secretly undermining your leadership aspirations or even your goals. And then we have leaders who self-sabotage, so you cut off your nose in spite of your face. And so when we go to the second part of the book, we tell you need to emerge in the light. So there we tell you about how to navigate the challenges, how to read a room. You can walk into the room, and we talk about pseudo-governmental leadership among leaders, where you have a team of persons who they have their own leadership under your leadership. And so their leadership is then to derail you. And then you can walk in a room and see how they're seated and see who's the leader in the room. If you know some of the things that you can look forward to, you can read the person's reaction. Usually if you're in a room of persons and the one person who is the covert underminer, you would notice the rest of the room would always look. If you say something, especially if it's something new, everybody would turn and look at that person's reaction.
So in your conceptualization, the leadership doesn't necessarily have to be always assigned.
No,
Okay.
it doesn't have to be always assigned. And sometimes you are thrust into leadership. I used to, at my point in my life, I would be like, why am I always placed in a position to go lead something? But it's maybe sometimes your presence, it's sometimes something you say, or people. One of my quotes, and I encourage persons, if you have a quote, to make sure that you get it copyright, is that when someone sees potential in you, prove them right. And it has two views, Dr. Pierre, because you can prove them right that you will succeed, or you can prove them right that you will fail. So it then behooves the leader on where do you go with that. And usually other people see potential in you that you can't see for yourself. That's why you get the leadership roles. That's why if Cassie walks into the room, she just has an aura and you expect something good to come out her mouth. When Miss Cecilia walks into the room, you just smile. She just has a presence. And you could see the clock ticking while she's sitting writing. And so people recognize that. And then they see the potential in you. So now if they support you, Dr. Boston, they will encourage you. They will help you on your journey. However, if they want to oppose that leadership, they will undermine you. So you need to really, really work on yourself. And the third part of the book is empowering that individual leader. And so we don't want our book to be a fantasy book that you read and put out. We want you to have it in your bag and you cross out and you go back and you check, because we give you examples to look for. We give you scenarios that you can say, oh, do I find myself in that category? Or, oh, I remember this, because sometimes it doesn't happen to you directly, but you speak to leaders. And one of the things I've experienced this year is meeting leaders who are totally mentally broken down and they don't want to lead in no capacity again. And leadership is not something that comes with a title, because you're a leader in your family, you're a leader at your church, you're a leader at home, you're a leader in your schools, you're leaders. But this person doesn't want to have anything to do with leadership now because of his experience. He was totally blindsided. And when he read in the book, he was like, where were you when I needed you? And I was like, what? I said, writing a book. But he then started to realize where he went wrong. And so he's getting back now on the horse of, okay, it wasn't me. And sometimes the plans fail and then you internalize it and say something is wrong with me. And I can ask persons in this room, sometimes you say, well, what did I do again? Or why doesn't that person behave the way I think they should behave? Or what did I do? And if you keep pounding yourself on that aspect, you're actually, I now find comfort in, I did it this way and I wanted this goal, and so you either come along or you don't. But at the end, I would feel good about my efforts. And that is where we talk about, and I know Cassie talks about it a lot because we're in other groups together, about your mental, how you feel about yourself. And you can't get anyone to walk along with you if you don't know where you're going. If you're not sure, you're going to reach the end, and if you're doing it and you don't really want to do it. And so the third part of the book talks about empowering the leader to be a leader, because it comes with certain responsibilities. A leader is just not what you see at the end, because a lot of people see maybe you get plaques, or maybe you get awards, or maybe you get recognition, but the late hours, the constant thinking of the problem, the no sleep, and all the hard work you put in, they don't really see it, so they just see the end. But you have to be prepared to go to that journey, go through it. And what is very important for everyone is to have a core team. We talk a lot about, in our culture, about the village that raises a child. Do you know there's a village that keeps the leader alive? And you need to have that village. And I am lucky. I have a core village that have been with me since, and the first person I met me actually when I was in school. And I was a person who was a little older than me, but I remember she reminded me of where we met. And she said, you came into the education department and you said, why didn't I get my scholarship yet? Do you want me to sleep on the street in St. Thomas? And she was like, who this girl is? And later on we became colleagues and we became really good friends. But she's part of my village because she could tell me, Brenda, no, because I'm what people term me a visionary, so I see a lot of different things, and she keeps me in check. We're talking about blue. Where you going with baby blue and teal? No, blue. Stay with blue. And so you're allowed to be yourself. So you need that support as a leader, because there's no leader who have made it that could do it alone. So your core team and your village is what sustains your journey.
Let me ask you that now that you're saying that, and anyone can come in as well and ask questions to Ms. Maynard about this. Does the book cover, or do you intend to cover that part in another series of the book about leaders who don't know that they're abusive? There is and I'll go into that a little later on, where there is a scale that you can do based on, so that you're able to see based on this checklist if you are indeed, where you fall in terms of being abusive leaders. And there was a study that was done, and I'll speak about that a little later, in terms of even getting the persons to be able to do the study. So, and I will go into that. Does the book talk about persons who are not sure?
Well, not in this first part of the book, or this first version of the book. We talk here more about empowering the leader and finding themselves. So we have a lot of self-evaluation. We do SWOT analysis on ourselves, and people don't realize you do it for situations, but it is very handy for yourself. So we also have an example of that, because in your leadership role, sometimes you become that leader that is the abusive one. You then, ignite the toxic behavior. You create that environment where persons don't feel safe. And so in our book with self-evaluation, that part actually makes you take a critical look at yourself. And so what we do is we have the seminars and we have one-on-one coaching that we go in depth, because this topic is taboo almost, because it's personal. But then you're scared to say anything because of your position, and people think you're talking to them personally, or they read into. I'm sure somebody gonna pick up the book and say, "I think she was talking about me," and because they see themselves in that, and instead of dealing with that situation, they kind of want to vert away from the real topic and say, oh, this person is doing this. But if you look at the situation and you see yourself in it, then you need to ask yourself a question.
I saw that you mentioned Ms. Richardson a couple of times, and you just mentioned the act of self-reflection for a leader. Yes. I want you, in your own experience in victim support services, how do you recognize the role of reflection for a leader in being able to kind of curb some of those problems that might be happening?
Okay, well, I mean, I can talk about myself as a leader, and then with any sort of experiences that have come across to me within the context of a client, even though we deal with more heavier, like crime, but you have people that stop in to talk about their situations sometimes. So with myself as a leader, self-reflexivity is a big part. I think even the training of just being a social worker, it's like a constant, it's a daily practice of self-reflexivity, where you constantly question, did I do the right thing? Especially if you're having a a client-centered focus, yeah, to making sure that your clients are getting to the goals that they need to get to without you pushing, because sometimes as social workers we tend to push, right? So these questions are really important, especially when you see the client go sideways, let's say, deciding not to take advice or, you know, something like that. Then you're able to sort of like sit back and say, okay, where is it that it was my intention for this client to go that way, even though we want the client to experience good things, but they decided to go the other way. How is it that you're not being wrapped up as the person that's coaching the other person to lead that way? So you sit down and you really bargain with it. But I think that it also comes with experience and honesty with yourself. Brenda was saying that sometimes we don't even want to recognize that within ourselves. If I know that I've hurt someone, that bothers me. It really does. But I also know with maturity and with age that in order, you have to make mistakes in order to grow. So allowing also the space to make mistakes is so important, right? That you're not sort of slammed down. So I don't know if that answers the question,
Yes,
but
yeah.
but self-reflexivity is big.
You know, I did not get a copy of your book as
Yes.
yet, but from the introduction, I am analyzing and seeing that this book might need a follow-up, because at the point of your introduction, it is telling me more of how to empower leaders in leadership roles. But we have, in my experience, I have had people say to me, I was not a born leader, for example. And in that I was not a born leader, they tried to be Miss Perfect. I experienced that myself in my career in Curacao, Miss Perfect. And when you try to help the person that was not a born leader, they would interpret it as you are now becoming somebody that you might overshadow them, and then they create this harness around them that can then lead to abusive leadership. You know, it becomes as if you are their competition against them, while you did not, as a person, intended that at all. It is because they themselves open up and say, I'm not a born leader. So it becomes more that, especially in education, that you want to be, you know, you want to be in a team. You want to help build for us to be able to progress. Since you're not a leader, a born leader, but you can get growth by other people's, you know, telling you or explaining you how their vision, certain things can go also, especially if we are in a relationship of an innovation part in education. And it is sad, in my experience, to see that the leaders that you really want to help to empower becomes those abusive leaders, because they feel threatened in their position. So I feel that if the book has the volume now on a character of empowering leaders, we need to go a step further, and that's why I like the program that's saying challenging abusive leaders, because by this too we can make abusive leaders aware of the damage that they are creating, something that you want to build in team together. Let's say they basically breaking it, because basically if you don't have a value for me and you become abusive and things like that, I would like to get away from around that toxic, because then the environment becomes toxic without you even not realizing also as a leader, because probably it's not your intention, but these are things that I have experienced, and basically I think it is good to bring the awareness and warn
And if I could,
leaders about that.
if I could talk about that, and connect what you're saying with what Cassandra is saying also too, and what I said in the beginning. What I recognize a lot of times, especially in the Caribbean, is we have a tendency towards the older models of leadership, the authoritarian type of leadership.
Yes.
Therefore, and
Yes.
a lot of our organizations are hampered by that, because the person that is, because leadership is not, you're not born, it is made. And what happens is that when you try to contribute towards the betterment of your organization, you exactly, you're labeled, and then you can get that kind of backlash as Ms. Elshot is speaking about. And what we don't, and that's why I started off the conversation that way, is we don't recognize the detrimental effect that that has on the overall organization. When Ms. Richardson spoke about you need space, you kind of hamper the creativity of individuals within your organization when you address it that way, and then some individuals in the organization are afraid to even shine because they do not want to act like they outshining you. They feel that you might be feeling that they outshining them, and then hamper you. If anybody else wants to add on that.
Back to that issue of authoritarian,
Yeah.
I think one of the problems that we have is that we have taken over structure, colonization, which is not ours. And basically, instead of sitting down and saying what's going to work for us, we have not done anything about that. Something I want to ask Brenda also is the issue of leadership. There's always, or has been for many years, the talk of, as a leader, you have to keep yourself a certain distance from those who you are working with. How do you deal with that? Because you can't get too close to your staff and so on.
Well, it depends on the scenario. There is no set formula for that, because of course as a leader you have a certain responsibility to lead equally among those who are with you on the journey. However, it also behooves you to know what's going on and to be involved in what's happening, because you need empathy. You need to know if Dr. Boston came in this morning and she did something that is not of her character, that's something, and then you don't take what she did as place value. So you just say, today something went wrong with her. And so a leader can't be detached. And you can't lead from the top looking down, because guess what? Every step of your leadership includes other persons. So if you sit on your throne, if you call it that, because some of us have the vision of I am leader and you are those below me, then you have a serious problem. Because if you want to move, and one of my good qualities is that I have a good thing with changing. And one of my main mottos is to leave it better than I met it. And it could be just one little thing that I did was different. That satisfies me as an individual. However, that comes with pushback, with persons not realizing it. I heard Dr. Pear talked about the authoritarian way of leadership. And one of our problems, I think, in the Caribbean is that we don't keep up to date with the changes. We don't keep up to date with the different. So if you fell in that category then, you definitely can't fall in it now, because the persons around you are different. They come with a different mindset. They could do a click of anything and get all the information they need. They don't need you now to be, they can get it themselves. So you then have to then work along with them. And so sometimes we say it is a lonely place as a leader, because you need to be comfortable with yourself, comfortable to be able to sit back and reflect and be honest with yourself. And one of the things I do all the time is when I'm in a situation, I say, Brenda, what was your part in this? What could you have done differently? If this thing had happened yesterday, would you have reacted the same way? And so I'm also putting myself into the situation of criticism. I heard the word competition. Competition is good because it keeps you going. It stops you from being stagnant. It doesn't have to be something bad. And so the mindset needs to change as to what creates a good leader. And the thing of every organization, the union, the whatever organization you're in at work, a leader's ultimate goal should be the betterment of the organization. And that comes with sometimes making unpopular decisions.
Correct.
So you can't, MP, be the person who's always collegial and don't want to say you're wrong, or don't want to make choices, or don't want to be the person who gets them. Yeah, that's a good word. Don't want to rock the boat, because then the boat going to set sail and leave you right there. So you need to get the middle point, and that comes with analyzing the situation. The job of the leader doesn't stop when the door closes, because you have to then prepare for the next day. You need to analyze what the situation had, and then how do you get it bigger? So it's a constant work, and that's why leaders are burnt out and disappointed when things happen, because they know how much they put into it with good intent. But if you know the dark spots or the dark sides, then it gives you like, okay, it's not me. So okay, it was that situation and not me, and it empowers you to move on. So
I also feel that as a leader, it's a humble position. You have to lower yourself to such, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but put yourself at such a level that you are accessible to your people, that they dare tell you. And I had my experience with my Marvel director, especially. They could tell me anything. And sometimes they would tell me, Oline, I'm not talking to you today, you don't come back tomorrow. Because, yeah. And it helped me to grow. You have to be humble, and you have to dare look yourself in the face and change. And if you make a mistake, because we all do, say it.
You're never too big to say you're sorry.
Say that you make a mistake. Yes. You have to humble yourself. They have to know that they should be able to, you should have a group they have fun with, but when it's time to work, we work. But that kind of relationship you got to have, but you've got to humble yourself. And they have to know you are there for, it's like you're talking about leadership, but without the people around you, you're not a leader. Without the people around you, you're not a leader. So you have to, that is your clan, that is your group, and you all together, you can forge forward. That's why when persons in certain position always have problems with their so-called subordinates, they are doing something wrong. Because if they are always against me or against the leader, something is wrong, and you have to reflect and say, where did I go? And sometimes it's eating humble pie.
Humble pie.
Sometimes it's eating humble pie, and it is not bad. You sleep better when you get it off your chest, that's for one. And you can go on and know that they have to know that you are there to improve. So sometimes the best ideas come from your team. And then you mustn't make the mistake when you're going to present it, don't mention their names.
Correct.
Thank you. You have to say, I did this and this, and but the idea came, and if it's anything to execute, I pass it on to that person, because I could never execute your idea.
That's right.
You have the total picture, and that's the person that has to execute the idea, and you make it convenient to them.
Can I follow up with, because I find what he said was so important with regards to sort of like a colonial authoritarian sort of approach, that you say that but I think it's certain, do I dare say, institutions or organizations that carry out this sort of authoritarian approach in leadership. Unfortunately, you might be in that organization, but that's what, when I came back to St. Martin, that was one of the things that I really thought, boy, what a big culture shock for me, because the authoritarian approach of what I say goes was so prevalent in certain spaces. Which had me thinking, oh my God, what I doing wrong? Where have I gone wrong? Did I make the right decision to come back home? But it's really, and I don't want to hamper on Everybody don't like to talk about colonial, but it is here. It is part of our history,
Right.
and if we do not contend with it,
Yeah.
we will not heal and move forward from it.
Right.
So-
Ms. Richardson, just so
Yeah.
I can comment a little bit. This is a safe space, and the reason that we had specifically these persons on the panel is because I need people to speak up.
Yeah.
This opportunity is for us to be able to tell those people listening, hey, we know, we see, we have experience, and we are here to make you aware of what we know, and you know it too, and here's what we all can do collectively. So please, this is a safe space.
Yes.
Ms. Cecilia?
Yeah, and I just to add to what you're saying, Cassie, the institution of the ombudsman, I feel comes in very good here because it is an institution that recognizes that there's a power imbalance when it comes to the government and its institutions and the people, and that offers you a space, a mechanism that you can go to approach in order to be more empowered in expressing your voice. Because oftentimes people do feel like if they speak out, if the retaliation, it is real.
It is real.
It is very,
Yeah.
very, very real.
Yes.
And
yes.
oftentimes, what is said in the public is not what people experience, and so reflection is so important. So the Ombudsman institution is there for when there's a breakdown between the community or any person within the community with government, and that's what the Ombudsman is there for. And on top of that, in relation to abuse, the Ombudsman recognized last year and the top of this year that more and more people were coming and basically complaining about not being able to get help, who are women in particular and with children who weren't able to get help in regards to domestic violence that they're experiencing. You know, so if they go to the police, if they go to the court of guardianship, if they go to wherever that related to government, and they were not able to get that assistance. Anyone, if you come and complain to the ombudsman and you explain the situation, we can quickly identify where those deficiencies, and then the ombudsman has taken it upon herself to say, you know what, we're gonna look at this system and see where it is that it is falling apart, what's happening here, that people are not getting the assistance that they need, and not only at the structure and the system, but also socially and culturally. What are the barriers that we have in terms of trying to reduce the prevalence of domestic violence? For some reason, it continues to escalate within the society, and why is that? So those are the kind of things that we are investigating right now. There's a systemic investigation, and if you know someone or you are experiencing domestic violence, we would love to talk to you. We would love to hear your experience, and also it's okay to speak up. So we are also part of the virtual support group. If that is what you're experiencing, please reach out to the Bureau Ombudsman on Facebook or on our website, and we will be happy to help you.
Let me make a connection between what was said there, and I'm happy that Mr. Pantoflet, you brought this up, because it is an underlying structure, and when we talk about abuse within leadership circles, it has a lot to do with power. And the power structure that we have adopted in 2025 is one that originated from our times in slavery, and we have continued to carry that. And if we don't look at it from that perspective, it takes out an important dimension that we don't tackle. So the power relationships, the type of relationship within organizations, and again, I honestly believe a lot of times one of the reasons why our organizations, especially in the Caribbean, do not move forward like in most other countries is because of the fact that a leader feels that they need to know everything, and do not rely on the support of their team and really work as a team. So we do need to examine the underlying concept of colonialism in how it structures our mind and how we think within the organization, and then we need to pay attention to the relationships within the organization that can allow that abuse to happen because of the power structures within there.
I want to take a minute to take for a break, but before we break, I do want to say this. You are here with Klein Foundation, and the theme today for this panel discussion is challenging abusive leadership. And we've seen that so many of you in the audience, you're doing your part in sharing the live, sharing the information. We have our support group here with us at the panel, virtual support group. We have the Ombudsman office represented also in the support group. We have Dr. Thomas from Turning Point in the support group. We have Miss Narissa, a lawyer, in the support group. Reach out to those persons privately if you need to. You can do that. And we're going to take a break, but I want to say this. Teachers who are out there listening, we are going to be speaking about this right after the break. And one of the points that I know you asked me to touch on, and I was going to touch on it anyway, is sexual harassment in schools against teachers. So that is a topic coming up right there. Stay with us while we go on this break. So welcome back to Klein Foundation Education Matters. The topic that we have here is challenging abusive leadership. And I'm going to give you this opportunity to grab a teacher, call a friend of a teacher, because we're going to speak about this in a few. But let me welcome right now Ms. Sharon Kanigita, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Good afternoon, viewers, listeners, and Facebookers on the live. My name is Sharon Kanigita. I am the president of WICSU PSU. In addition to that, I am the Cape Community Council, and I am the National Director of Special Olympics St. Martin. And last but not least, I work for the Ministry of Education within the Department of Division Education Innovation. So yes, Dr. Boston, you are
Thank you
speaking
so
to
much
the
for
church.
that. Thank you so much for that. So I know we're really going into it. When we started out, we spoke about leadership, what exactly is leadership, and we talked about the dark side of it and the effective leaders. And now we're going to get into our homegrown situations here on St. Martin. And as an educator myself, I know that we have experience in education, teachers that are leaving education. And this is nationally and internationally, teachers are just leaving the field. Now, we know that teachers leave because of the workload. Yes, we know that teachers leave because of lack of resources. We know that teachers leave sometimes because of the emotional and psychological abuse, which we're going to get into as well, because that really works on their mental health. And but what we don't talk about is teachers that have been sexually harassed and left school because they could no longer work under those conditions, fail to report it. I've seen it with my own eyes in terms of text messages and different types of behavior from the leaders, even up to human resource. So with persons not sure, this is why we have also the unions and the ombudsman, because sometimes you go to the top leadership and then you're unable to get the necessary help. I'm going to share a little bit of statistics. We need more statistics in St. Martin.
Yes.
But I'm just going to share based on, and this is why it is important that you are here today, because what we recognize, and this is all of us, the unions and all of us here as well, we recognize that we are indeed stronger together. And this has caused internationally as well to bring down those, I used at one point powerhouse, and Miss Elsha told me, don't give them that power. Don't say power, because they're not, we're not giving them that indeed. So those persons and organizations who believe that they can do what they want and nobody can do them anything, no matter how high and so forth. But I want to say, in 2018, there was a Me Too movement. So Me Too, Me Too, I will report it. Me Too, it happened to me. Me Too, it happened to my friend. And it talked about sexual harassments in the workplace, and that they too was able to bring down these influential persons we are seeing that now. We are seeing even outside that these top persons who believe that they can do these types of sexual harassment and abusive behavior, that they too are coming down. So we are here to say as well that this is what we expect to happen also in St. Martin, outside of St. Martin. When you stand together, you can bring those that down. What I want to say is, what they mentioned as well in 2018 in this study is that it also happens in schools. It talked about 40% of teachers and school administrators, they reported sexual harassment. And then we went as far as 25% of female educators say they have been personally experienced sexual harassment or assault on the job. And we had 6% of educators, male teachers, that also said that they were sexually harassed. And it is important to also speak about men being sexually harassed, because we just go about believing it's only women, but it's also men, and they're afraid to report. I mean, we females are afraid to report already, but we have males who are afraid to report for a number of reasons, which we will talk about now, and those in the audience, you can share that with us as well. But I want to share this just briefly. There was a teacher, and if you feel this, you know a friend or a person or any situation, whether it's in teaching or it's in another organization, but this one is a teacher. And with this teacher in Richmond County School District, she reported her principal sexually harassing her, starting from the phone, sending text messages that I hire only sexy teachers and so forth in the message. And this comes from the lawsuit that was filed. And when she filed about the principal, the district came after her. Why? Because the principal is this person that everybody knows and we can't touch this person. So the district came after her for filing the complaint. Ms. Ombudsman's office, you will talk about that, Ms. Cecilia, or so forth as we go along with the unions, because a person then tends to feel, what do I do if I went to HR, or what about if it's HR? What else do I do? So she also went ahead and so he sent these messages and then eventually invited her into his office, where he again was telling her, the only reason I hired you is because you're sexy. Again, based on the lawsuit. It's not Dr. Boston saying. And the teacher expressed how much stress she had during the court cases, because she had to move from place to place because of the community. It was a small community, and people who found that this influential person, it can't be, or they don't want it to be, really harassed her. And eventually, you know, as she went along, she won the case. But it's just to show that eventually, and some persons who are abusive as well, and organizations, they know that there's only so much you can keep up with. You know, it can really
Kill you.
Yes, it can kill you,
Drain
drain you, a big burden. So there are teachers, for example, that have, you're seeing the text messages, and they are afraid, or they were afraid to file a complaint. So they will tell their principal, or they will tell a friend, and the friend would be, they just will not file. They will leave the school. I also want to bring this to attention. We have some principals or some schools that find out that teachers are sexually harassing children or so forth. And what they do is they move them on to another school. Like they do not sign the contract, so they let them go.
That's true.
Yeah. And then they move on to another organization. And do you think that these people decide to behave themselves?
No.
They just continue with the same type of behavior.
Because the person, sometimes the highest person, know about it and don't do anything about it. If you as a person in position, this has come to your attention that this person is acting like that, it shouldn't be waiting for another letter. He should be first out, or she should be out of the school, and you should be brought in and dealt with immediately. Why you have to wait until another? And it happened, and the next thing what happens, Dr. Boston, they don't send it on to the other schools. So the other schools don't know unless you hear it on the street. You don't know.
So let's talk a little bit now about what can actually be done now. Are there barriers that prevent the cross of information from one organization to the next?
Let me go to, can I go to Ms. Elsha just for a minute, sorry, before that, because I've been a past union of education president. So have you ever seen or heard, or what challenges have there been in education when it comes to teachers reporting abuse?
Well, I have a variety of them, but I think this program I won't be able, but one that stood out very much to me was when person in a higher position, HR, that has to hire people, shows up by these teachers' home in the night. Is that the space? You're out of place, you're out of order. And when these persons say to me, I'm asking, and what did you do? You understand? What did you do? Because you're not my colleague actually, like let's say on the work floor. But with what intention you are showing up at my house? And even the text, why are you texting me on my private phone, on my WhatsApp? You go to take my phone, add the WhatsApp, and then texting me these type of texts, you know. And the point is, that these people are still in position because, again, the persons, I don't know if it's culturally, they don't want to report it. They don't want to harm that person, so they prefer to bow out. The teachers prefer to bow out. They know they're wrong. They're not going to submit themselves to these persons and their harassment, but they cut it off. That is how I have experienced when the complaint come to me. They cut it off. It's either they look. I had one that even left the island because of this. He left education on St. Martin because this is trash. You gonna you supposed to be my the one that is hiring me, and I have to sign a contract by you. But after I sign my contract in your office, you are showing up at my space, my private space. That is not the way. And it happens now that it's not alone in education, but I have had also the experience of a complaint where females in leadership are harassing females. So it's not male against female alone, like you would get in school, but you got female harassing females. And when the complaint is launched, that person then becomes like the black sheep, because you launch a complaint and somewhere along the line, when it comes out publicly, you even have certain people in the organization defending the perpetrator. Then what can you do?
Yeah, but they can't defend.
When I say defending, when I say defending the perpetrator, let's say, because this person is very good with them that did this incident to an next person, this attempt of abuse to the other person, nobody don't touch this person. When it has to be a time where wrong is wrong and right is right, and consequences should be attached to certain behaviors in the workplace. You cannot have abusive leadership where the victim, based on their experience, becomes a double whammy, a double victim. Why should I have to leave my job, something that to protect myself, because the system is not doing anything to the one that is doing it and giving them the slap on the wrist to say, no, you're not in that position for that. You're out of place, you're out of order, and with some serious consequences. So if we need to have an element change to have for certain behaviors, just like how you can have, how you would say, you would have a scorching, a suspension, or a warning letter, or something that would then lead to either you correct yourself, or after so much, then you can't hold that position anymore.
But would it help? Would it help if the person writes a letter to the person, the first, write a letter and explain why she or he finds the behavior offensive? At least you have something on paper.
I think one of the things that Sharon is I'll make it short. One of the things that we don't do is look into the background of those persons who are being hired, because most of these perpetrators have a history.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
That is not known.
Sometimes.
That is not known, because, and what we're discussing here is the fact that they are allowed, because of underreporting, to continue that kind of behavior elsewhere.
Right.
And I think it's important that we have, and I think Dr. Pierre mentioned it, what is the communication, in this case we're talking education, between the present school and the one to which he or her is going to be sent. And for me, I think that's very important. And that's the
Yes.
Also, I would be interested to know.
Sorry, she paused. So we're waiting. Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the discussion that is going on. And the topic of the discussion is actually challenging abusive leadership. Now, We went over to the educators being sexually abused. I look at abuse as abuse period, whether it is sexual, whether it is bullying, whether it is verbal, emotional, mental, it's all abuse. And especially if it's come from the capacity of a leader, it is a double whammy. Why? Because that is your daily bread. That is your career. So people are, you're looking at persons that holds your career, holds your mortgage payment, hold your child's school fee in their hands, and they're using this power to emulate exactly who they should not be. Now, if we are going into the topic of sexual harassment, first of all, we need to recognize what is sexual harassment. Is sexual harassment me telling you, you know something, Cecilia, you look nice today. I like the way your hair looks. Is that sexual harassment? When does it become sexual harassment? We tend to accept the fact that somebody could pick up our phone, which we should not be having. Nobody on the job call you on your personal phone, but we share because it's the era of social media. We share all our personal information. You know, we go to the bathroom, we put it on social media. So now we have opened our lives to these people coming into our personal space. So somebody picks up the phone and tells you, "Hey sweetie, how are you today?" And you cordially answers, "I'm good. But my name is Sweetie." So if I want you to respect me, you have to say, "Miss Cannigator, how are you today?" Depending on the level of collegialness we have, "Sharon, how are you today?" But we tend to accept and then want to retaliate when it goes a little too far. The communication between school boards and wherever these persons go, that's a total different level. That has nothing to do necessarily with the attack on sexual harassment or sexual abuse, in my opinion. Now, how do we recognize it? We first have to make sure that our laws recognize it. Right now, our laws does not recognize sexual harassment as a criminal act. So what is our first move? Our first move is to criminalize sexual harassment, which is something that the union is currently busy with. WICSU PSU is currently busy with proposing a law to Parliament to criminalize sexual harassment, sexual abuse, and as a matter of fact, any kind of abuse within the workforce. So if you start there and identify what it is that you are talking about, then you can have disciplinary actions that follows. But right now, there isn't an identity for it. And that's the reason I said, if somebody pick up the phone and say, "Hi, sweetie," or "Hello, my darling," "Good morning, love," is that sexual harassment? In my opinion, yes, it is, because I'm not neither your sweetie, your darling, or your love. And we are supposed to be in a professional environment. So you can't open the door on the left and then expect to close it when it becomes a little too wide open. So we have to start educating our workers. We have to start educating everybody. What is recognized as sexual harassment? Where do we draw the line? Even to the young children, when they go to school, teacher says, "Come here, little sweetie. Come here, little boy." No, your children have a name. They need to be taught how to identify themselves as the king, the queen, the emperors, and the empress that they are from young. And then we could start talking about the colonization, because then they would recognize who they are. Right now, there is no recognition because we haven't taught it. We speak about it because we are on the level of identifying and understanding what it is. But as educators, we also need to start to teach it from when they can comprehend. Because now we got a TikTok generation. If they could tell me how to upload a video and how to make a live video, then they should be able to understand who they are. And where do we begin with that?
Yes. Let me come in right there, Ms. Cannigator. And this has to do with reporting. I think Ms. Bryson mentioned that, and also Mr. Pantoflet. I do want to say this part, or ask, let's maybe share how we can encourage people to do it. Why? We have the evidence. The evidence there. It's on phones. We have it. People have in the emails, or they have the information.
Good.
But those persons are afraid. Now I want to bring it back to this before you go there. Now, if I tell somebody, yes, report it, and now you're saying there's no laws to protect me, and I have experience in schools, even when it comes to children, and we do reporting about we need to remove certain children from a hostile environment at home, where the school does the best that they can do, but then after that something else goes wrong. And then the child is back in the home where this situation is happening. So I say that because now, so a teacher listening to us right now, an educator, not only teachers, and anyone in the workforce, and we're telling them speak up, but report, and they do that. And where is the support? So that's my question of what to do
So
next.
that is for me, the approach of WICSU PSU is the following. We address the situation because we have had persons that have been sexually harassed and abused that have come to the union as a safe place. And we've tried on all levels to have it addressed. However, it comes back to that three-letter word, law. And because there is no law, we have the reports. But because it's not a criminal act, nothing happens. So in essence, it now relies on the employer to have that type of heart to say, listen, I am not going to tolerate this in my business, and I need to maybe give you the first warning, second disciplinary action, and then the third termination. But because there is nothing actually written to hold that person accountable for their actions, is the reason why we are seeing it escalating. And I think together we should ban, and that is something we need to actually work fervently on. It's something that we should be working on like yesterday, or maybe last year, to get this law to Parliament, whereas sexual abuse, sexual harassment has then become law. I look at you, Aishira,
Yes,
and I know that they will come and complain, but then my question to you is, I'm taking over,
Yes.
Dr.
No,
Boston, but because we are also in the same situation, whereas we get the complaints, and I know they will go to the ombudsman, but that's if they're civil servants.
Yeah.
But we also have it from the private sector. We also have it from the private school teachers. So where do they go? Because all of them can't come to you. And there is no law. So what do we do in a situation like that? There is nothing called bullying. I know that the Integrity Chamber is working also on the whistleblowing advice that was submitted to government, which is a start in the right direction, because then that sort of secures the person that speaks, the person that is willing to come forward and voice their complaint or discuss the matters. It also secures that now it will eliminate a lot of that sexual harassment, sexual abuse period, because the whistleblower now feels free to come and speak. I like the fact that Cassandra said that the MP worked in the environment where we had this, what you call it?
I don't even think that I could even finish the sentence. I just said he works in one of those institutions or organizations where the authoritarian approach could be most prevalent.
Okay, good. And that's the problem. That authoritarian approach.
Perhaps.
No, I work in it too.
He said to clarify. I think his
I'm going to
expression is to
clarify.
clarify. Yeah.
I'm going to clarify what that means. It means that we're still working in a system where what I say goes, and you got to do what I tell you to do. And not everybody has the guts to stand up and say, not today. Today is not a good day. I need a wellness day. Because employers have this type of attitude of putting their hands on the worker's neck. Okay, not even putting it on their head and trying to hold them to bless them. They putting it, if there was only the need is, you've said a prayer. They are putting it in their neck, their hands and their neck to choke them. Because if you speak up, you become a target. And you don't only become a target for bullying, there's also a target for sexual harassment. Because they know how to shut you up. Okay, and if you are one of those that was accustomed of standing and speaking your truth and standing for your right, they find ways and means of not only isolating but starting to touch your salary. You dares not come to work 5 minutes late. You dares not come back from lunch on time. So now you start to walk on P's and Q's and you're on eggs. Okay, because they'd find a way. Everybody has a weak link. And they found that weak link and they will expound on that. And because now they have sort of intimidated you into silence, it elevates to other areas. And I've experienced that for the years that I'm sitting on the chair of WICSU president. Okay, so it isn't something that people, up to today, I mean, I just see my phone going off because it's happening as we speak. Okay, and we talk about, for example, the prison guards. I heard the folk, they being mentioned. I heard a couple of other entities being mentioned. But the pressure that these workers are under, you expect, as the public, to go and get 100% because that's their job. In the meantime, they are not being recognized for the job that they're giving you, or the service that they're giving you. They're not even sure as to where it is they're going with their career. So it is not only with the teachers, and as we learned in the symposium, which I find really, really, really heartbreaking, is that the teachers are neither here nor there. They are recognized as the gray economy. So if the teachers are the gray economy, what happens to them when they go on pension? There's a lot of things that we can talk about when we speak about challenging abusive leadership. And I call that abusive leadership because this is not now. On Monday, if you do good or you want to take a holiday, you're in the LMR. On Tuesday, if you make a mistake, you belong in the civil code. So which one exactly governs you? And that is something for me that also needs to be talked about where educators are concerned and certain members of the society of government.
Let me get Ms. Elshot to come in here because she's a
But I want to
professional there.
clarify something
Oh,
first.
okay. 'Cause,
Yeah.
But the structure I'm in, present structure, so I didn't really
You're
grasp.
in it no more.
No, why I'm saying this,
Yeah.
one of the things that, and I don't want to deviate from the subject matter, is that you can be in a structure, but it's not always you agree with the structure.
Yeah.
But because of the majority that
Yes.
decides in a particular area,
Yeah.
you either
We agree with you.
Yeah.
But that didn't change the fact that it's a colonial system.
exactly. But I don't want to. But sometimes in the full notes you said is the issue of you mentioned the issue of law. And the reason why I didn't go into detail in that because when I started doing some research I realized that there's nothing there. But they are part of the kingdom, but they have their laws though. In order to protect, I mean, the children, or even the transgenders and so on, they're protected. But we are still behind where that's concerned, and I'm glad to hear that you are busy preparing to submit a law to Parliament. And you got to put the pressure because I know it works. If it's something that is of priority, yes. If not, it goes to the process of delay
Promotion.
and address and change and put the I and the T and so on and come back over again. You
We are
know what I
called
mean?
union.
So
Yeah.
We are called union.
Yes.
Remember that.
I know.
That's all I'll say. We
I
are
know.
called union.
And I really hope that it's addressed because the folks who are listening right now, and as I said in the beginning, and you mentioned it, underreported, it is also in private sector because I worked in immigration for about 20 years, and unfortunately a lot of undocumented, not a lot, let me just make this statement. There are those who want to get their documents, especially female, and the employer was told and plain, you have to do X, Y, Z. Otherwise, I
Still
will sign
happening.
it. It's still.
It's still
And
happening. Yeah.
one of the problems that I've had, even as a member of parliament and even as Island Council, I'm trying to figure out why it is that there are certain laws in place where this individual is undocumented. In this case, the Minister of Labor has the authority based on law to issue fines, but they don't do it. And the laws are on the books, but they don't do it. That's the next challenge again that we have to face.
Okay. Okay, this is getting interesting. Ms. Elshab, can you tell us where we as teachers, what we can do? You know, because a lot of teachers are on and listening.
Well, basically, I fully agree with my sister in the union that is saying that we have to start with recognizing what exactly is the criminal part of this. Because without having that stronghold on that book, a lot of people feel when they go to make a complaint, who do you complain to? If you go to the police to complain, are they the ones to do the investigation and come up? Even if you go to the ombudsman to complain, if they do the investigation and come up with certain recommendation, who is going to carry that out? Basically, we have heard of the last term of investigation is going to be launched at this and this school, because there were even serious things where children came up and, let's say, accused. A parent came up and accused, wrote a letter and accused a teacher, which, of course, basically, to me, there's no truth in that, because they have cameras. They even look in the cameras, never saw that teacher in that area. So it's like these children sometimes have a wide imagination, but still you don't want to see that. You don't want to see that. When you have investigations, as unions, we never get the feedback. What is the outcome? There are investigations at Prince William Alexander. There are investigations at Genevieve. There are investigations here and there. So you can imagine that some teachers would swallow their pride. They wouldn't even go and talk about it. They deal with it in an undercover way, and basically they move out on that. Is that the right attitude? Me, probably me. If I was to live over, because I'm a pensioner, and this would happen with me, I would have given that person such a slap. Probably I'll give them such a slap that the face and everybody would know why I give them a slap, because you're too out of place. But basically that's me. And we reach to a point where, again, it all comes down to the consciousness of the person and how they're going to deal with the matter personally. Because I have heard a number of things, given a number of advice, and within my board also they have given a number of advice, but certain teachers don't follow up. They take their own decision. So when it comes to that, to the emotional part of how they feel, you know, it reached to the point where you would say then, Rolling Stones gather no more.
But if I could add there, Cassie, one second. If I can add there though, Sister Claire, if, again coming back to the sexual harassment
factor.
Yes. If you agree, for example, if you are offered a position to be the glass carrier because you are the bottle carrier, and in order for you to get a higher position, you agreed to sleep with your boss, then it is no longer sexual harassment. So the day that he tell you no, you decide you're no longer sleeping with him, and he feels offended and he put you back to being a bottle carrier, now your feelings get hurt and you want to come and report, is that sexual harassment? You understand?
Yes, it is.
No, you gave consent.
No, that was
wait. I'm being the devil's advocate.
Oh.
You gave consent. Okay, you gave consent to having this done. And that's the reason why I said education.
So that's what I wanted
You
to talk
understand?
about.
Thank you.
So, Miss Cecilia invited me to do a education component on the sexual harassment. This is something that even when I got back to the island, working with Safe Haven, I had been doing that because I noticed that it wasn't about domestic violence in the home and just about the awareness about colleagues, but it was also, there were private organizations, the airport, that said, we have a problem and we would like some awareness around this. Now, I don't know about the LMR and what it has, but what I encourage, because I'm not HR, but as an educator and as a community developer and a lover of our community, what I find is really important is that education component. So what I encourage organizations to do is have a code of conduct at least.
That's it.
So when we're talking about, Ms. Candita talked about abuse and harassment in general, that's important, and the sexual harassment component you need to tease out specifically. Now, I'm saying this also knowing that I'm probably going to get backlash later from community outside who say, but Cassie, what you're trying to do is change our culture. Stop trying to change our culture because we warm, and I like to be warm, right? You're friendly, you're going in there trying to change. This is how we commiserate with one another. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, Sharon also talked about when do you recognize the line? When you say, Mr. Sear, you look really nice today. But if I tell Mr. Sear she look nice today, then tomorrow, then next week, then the next day, and then saying, okay, now let's go out for dinner now. And let's do something else later. And Mr. Shida, buy now your shoes. Now we're talking about your legs. Now Mr. Shida, we're talking about your arms and your breasts. Right? So it's frequency, and it's also how we deliver that message and how we're looking at people too. In your code of conduct, you don't need government for that. You can take that upon yourself to do. You can hire a lawyer. You can go to ChatGPT. I don't care. Whatever it is that you decide to do, in order to make your own policy. But the education and sitting down, because not everybody knows that they perpetrate. Especially if you live in a position of privilege, if you are from a certain gender, if you are from maybe a certain race, maybe you are a certain culture, right? That you take ownership without you even recognizing how much privilege has been awarded to you, with not even recognizing that it was undeserving. It was just because the way that you showed up in society, in social environments, right? That you come with this sort of like authority already because of that sort of social structured background. So, and what it is that I'm saying is that, men will be usually the perpetrators of sexual harassment, because socially it's sort of like they're given that, and I love men, I'm not male bashing, it's not about that. Right, it's not about that, but you have to also recognize, and it's the hardest thing for a person that has power to recognize that they have power, right? So they need to get checked. And a lot of times that the things that they say and make a person feel, they don't recognize that they're harming that other person. They take it for granted.
I wanna.
But
go right ahead.
The reaction from what we have to also learn is the reaction from that other person. Sometimes they don't accept it, they don't like it, but they laugh. And then that is what we have to teach on both sides. If somebody tells you something that does something that you do not appreciate, you should say it.
But there's more retaliation. So, that's the thing, there's more retaliation, right? So we can do, because we do also teaching the assertiveness communication as well, with women that have been through domestic violence relationships or even sexual assault, right? Because usually if you are abused your incidence or your risk of being abused again goes up. So it's no surprise to me that if a client comes in and they talk about abuse now in their 30s, that when we dig and we find out their history, and they have been abused by uncle, they have been abused by this, it's not a surprise, right? Because now you carry, and then you also you engage with the world in that way, where you don't speak assertively, you don't know yourself, and then usually it's women that have these issues, right? Because again, socialization. So to make a long story short, when we're talking about the sexual harassment, it's great that Ms. Kanagita and Ms. Elshak will be sort of pushing that forward to Mr. Pantoflet over there by his organization, his institution. In the meantime, there are things that you can do. You are not without agency. You are not powerless.
Right.
You don't have to wait for government. Build your own policies and teach.
And this is where I wanna come in on that. Now, we make a code, and this is me being the devil's advocate, like you said. You make a policy or a code of ethics.
Yeah.
And a person's leaders who don't feel that they are part of that code. This is where we're going with this. Because yes, you have that in some organizations of what to expect, what looks good, what's not good for some. We need more of that. But when you have as well, and I mentioned this also when I was on the radio the other day, a lot of times you have political backing. Some leaders within St. Martin has political persons backing them, and we know. So I actually had a question here that said, I think Ms. Elshot was speaking at the time. If we, and I'm sure that even here on this panel, we know who those persons are in the society who's doing the abuse.
Yes.
We know who's the HR that's doing the sexual abuse. We know who's these persons doing the sexual abuse, the psychological, physical. We know. It is a public secret out there. So my question is, because sometimes you have political people flaunting them all over the place, and you are hurting inside. What about that?
Yeah.
The victim is seeing that, hey, people have been filing for years. The name of these abusers have been in public for a short time. They wait for it to die down. This is why I said the pressure has to continue with awareness.
Yes.
You have to,
Yes.
and then what you're saying as well. We could do as much awareness as we want. If the law is not there to hold them accountable, we're in big trouble.
Yeah.
So my question was about the
But
code of ethics.
there is another way that we as union handles that. With every company, each and every company that we have a collective labor agreement with, a CLA, we put it in our CLAs. So within our CLAs, that becomes part of our disciplinary action. So if we get a report from one of our workers that this happened, or they felt that it happened, an investigation needs to happen. Okay, and then even though, like Mr. Pantoflet said, we do have the Dutch laws, and we also have the ILO laws, the International Labour Organization. So from one of those organizations, whether it's the Dutch law, we look for jurisprudence.
Exactly.
And if we can find jurisprudence anywhere within one of the court systems, that is what we will use to be able to defend our worker until St. Martin gets its own disciplinary action. Until that time, this is the route that we will have to take. But to secure the workers, we include sexual harassment, mental harassment, bullying, and any type of discrimination. And we also need to recognize that because now we have the LGBTQ community, that sexual harassment isn't only male to female. It is female to female, it is male to male. You understand? And we do have those male that also feel on the job sexually harassed by their female superiors. So we have a generalization of sexual harassment. So from the chair of a union leader, I will not just say it is women, it is general, because it goes all type of ways these days where Males are in relationship with a male, and then they fight, and you'll swear to God it is a we call it heterosexual. Yeah, you know, but it's human love.
Yeah.
So regardless to what your gender is, that particular activity is there. So we need to recognize it, and I will not stigmatize it to just females. I look at it from a general perspective, because we do get those complaints as well.
Yes.
Where the female supervisor is in love with Mr. Pierre. And because he does not accept her advances, he is then
Yeah.
targeted. You know, and by him not responding, she retaliates in such a manner that it makes them very uncomfortable in the workplace. So we have those situations as well.
Okay, let me go to Mr. Pamphlet and
Yes.
then Mr. Celia.
It always come back again to the issue of the platform where the complaints can be launched, and not only launched, but what do you do about them? And also, what is sexual harassment?
Yeah.
By definition, what's it actually? Visual, physical, mental. All these things should be made plain, because sometimes the individual who is being harassed might not even know that that's what it's all about.
Correct.
So
I'm
once they
available
know,
for education. I have come to y'all already. I'm available to educate.
why
So
you keep saying you all? They asked me 2 years ago, I tell them I'm done with it. I'm sorry, coming from. No, but what you should do, keep doing it, because the fact is, we cannot give up on this station. It's too serious.
It's too
Correct.
serious.
It is.
And it has far-reaching effects
Right.
in the community
Yeah.
itself. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
there's just
I
a
have
start.
a comment here that I think.
Oh,
we
you have a
should
comment?
share. Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I think I just got a comment from a teacher, and I think I have to share this too.
Okay.
Because Sharon talked not only about the sexual harassment, but the mental abuse. So this teacher is saying, I hope the discussion does not leave out the part that it should dare opening up our mouths against the gang and the clique that is formed against the victims in the schools. Okay? And then to the person's opinion, there should also come a law in play that extend where school managers and acting principals don't get the feeling that they are in power and that they are the masters and we the teachers are their slaves. A rule need to be implemented, I think. In the past, it might give them a run not to lose their jobs, neither that teachers are allowed to evaluate them legal. Oh, something is wrong there. Anyway, the essence is that the teachers should also be able to evaluate their leader.
Their leaders.
Yes.
Yes.
360 evaluation.
Exactly.
That's the
I'm surprised we
essence
haven't
that
been
the
doing
person is
that as a
saying.
community.
And the key, because that they don't hold the key in their hands, and the single owner to open and turn the key to lock, and the key of the lock towards the teachers. So that the same rule that the teachers have the rights to also evaluate the school managers and the
Yes,
active
yeah,
principals.
Yeah.
So in
Absolutely.
this way, they find that because there's a way that they would say they can make you and they can break
Yeah.
you. So it should be a broader platform, because this person is constantly experiencing a mental how you would say, yes,
Yeah.
and a mental harassment.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, on the job. So it is a comment that I think I
And,
should
and we
share.
appreciate the comment.
just-
Yeah, we appreciate you
for
reading
sure.
that, because
Yes.
we agree.
For sure.
This
Yeah.
is what this is for. And one of the reasons that we went to sexual harassment, it is because in schools you don't hear about it.
Yeah.
You do not hear about leaders with sexual harassment in schools, with teachers, teachers themselves being sexually harassed. So I wanted to make sure we didn't leave that out. Teachers also asked me to bring that part up because we leave it out a lot. But the emotional part, I try to get mental health as well. I do also know men's mental health, Mr. Guns. I have to shout out to him. I told him that. He has his initiative happening right now as we speak.
Yeah.
So he couldn't be here, but he was supposed to be on the panel as well. And so we're going to put up the information as well, so that we're able to share the numbers and so. But this comment is exactly the type of comments we need. The mental stress you're getting is because you're on the job, you're trying to tell somebody, and like you said, you get victimized. You get the cliques of people who's saying, how come it happening to her, or how come it happened to him?
Yes.
And only now you're reporting it.
Yeah.
Maybe now I get the
The
courage
to
to
do
report
it.
it.
Right.
And that's what we want. The more that we do this, the awareness, the education, like you said,
Yeah.
we're going to have more people starting to speak out. And like Mr. Pantaflet said, where are the statistics? If we don't have the data, we're not going to know how to measure if we are doing better. So we need to go out and get that data. So you have some data, and we have to start to compile those and put them out so that we can, not with names of course, but just so we could see how many types of cases, this type of case, that type of case. The Ombudsman Office, do you do that? You have reports on that?
Yeah, well, we do take data on the kind of cases and complaints that we have, and part of the investigation that we're doing now on domestic violence is also talking to people with lived experiences, collecting the information that spoken to school boards. We reach out to all the school boards and all the schools, all kind of stakeholders. We've spoken to past presidents from Safe Haven as well. We want to continue to do that. We've spoken to victim support services. And we will continue to do that. I just want to make a few points based on the conversation that we had. While it is good that we work on legislation, we must understand that we have means now to do certain things. And although, and this is very hard to understand in the moment, but it is the reality of dealing with these type of cases, is that sometimes the first one may not see the kind of justice that they want, but you reporting will help probably the next person if it doesn't happen in that way. So that's what we hope to do.
Sorry, Ms. Cecilia, it's so important. I need to say that again.
Right. So,
yes, please.
you know, oftentimes with sexual harassment or abuse, a lot of the victims sometimes don't get the justice that they would like to see, or we would like to see. Cassie, you may be able to speak on that much more. However, your case is still valid, your complaint is still valid, that you document it, because it creates a history. Whereas the next time they do it, then they could say, hey, this is not just, you're not just isolated. One of the things that we try to do at the Ombudsman is also let people know that while abusive structures and leaders thrive, it won't happen forever, especially if we recognize that each of us have power, and collectively we have even more power, right? So that we have to speak up, and if you aren't able to speak up, that you speak to someone, that someone may, because that's what happens too. Someone speak to someone that connect you with victim support services, or you come to us and we connect you with someone else. And another thing I want to say, in our society, we just have to be real and recognize that we have a society where sexual harassment is normal. It's normal.
It's like a norm.
It's normalized.
It's normalized.
It's normalized.
It has been normalized. And again, I go back to the word that we don't like to talk about, colonialism and slavery, because we have adapted those exact same power structures, those exact same power dynamics in a patriarchal system, those value systems that are very negative and detrimental. In particular, while it is abusive experience by everybody, in particular, women are the ones that feel it the most, disproportionately. So, not negating that it happens to men, but oftentimes when it happens and a woman is involved, there is so much other things that compile on top of that. She's the one that has the children most of the time. She's the one that's unable to move because she's the one
unable to work. She's the one that's unable to.
So all of those things we have to look at. If you're telling me to leave my abusive situation, but where am I going to go with me and my children? So we have to take a good look at that. When I look at the LMR, for example, and I understand that it may not be as clear as we want it to be, we have to work on that. Part of the policy, and like the HR policy, it has one of the offenses is sexual harassment. So it is stated in the LMR that sexual harassment is an offense something that's considered an offense. What we do not have is a policy, like Cassie talked about, like Sharon talked about, that we should have in terms of what are those acceptable, completely probably things that are unacceptable,
Off-limits,
some of those
right.
gray areas. We have to be able to have the conversation. Government doesn't have that. We need that. We also need a HR, and this is not only for government but also private sector. But my area is mostly government. We also need an HR that can deal with these type of things and take it serious, and also understand the power dynamics that they hold. One of the things that we have recognized is in our 2024, which is going to be an annual report, which is going to be published soon, that the HR cases again are rising, which means that, again, we talk about the people knowing we have to do more awareness in terms of what your rights, what's your responsibilities, understand the power of the union, revitalize the union. Some people I speak to are not part of it. I'm contacting Sharon to see what it is we can do. So those are the things that we can do. And also, I'm not a civil law attorney. However, one of the principal things is that an employer has to act like a good employee and employee as well. Now within those areas, you have then sexual harassment is unacceptable. So we gotta do we have something to work with. Maybe it needs to be more concrete, but we do have areas we need to work with. But we have to recognize that our society, we have a problem, so that we can address it. It also starts from the top. Like if you're on the floor of Parliament and you're degrading women, if you're talking, if you the way we speak about sexual harassment, we speak about. I unfortunately, sometimes you hear a comment, well, if I hear how they are speaking in public, how do I feel empowered to speak up? So we are telling people here by the Ombudsman, speak out, but our leaders have to be a reflection of that. And one of the things I love about the Ombudsman as a leader is she's not afraid to say, well, you know what, this is not my forte. Let's call in victim support services and get sexual harassment classes. So we allow Cassie to come in, speak to us, and teach us, give us the information. We had that conversation and we realized, well, we ourselves need, for example, a code on sexual harassment, and we challenge every other institution, government or otherwise or private, to do the same, adopt a policy, because today for me, tomorrow for you. So that's kind of the way that we, I really appreciate that we have a leadership that says, and what we're going to get next is a domestic violence workshop, because if we're going to be dealing with persons of the lived experience, survivors, I want to be, when they come to us, we want to be able to receive them well, and again, not, for example, re-victimize them. We want to be able to do it. We want you to know we are a safe space, and we will fight tooth and nail to get you the justice that you deserve. But the people got to recognize one thing, like Ms. Elshad said, when the Ombudsman we do a thorough investigation, we make recommendations, it is then up to the government to implement them, execute that. And here's where it come in. Most of the time, sometimes we get institutions that say, they adapt it right away, but if they're not held accountable for not doing that, if the Ombudsman goes and say, hey, these are the things we have noticed, and your department, your ministry is not following up on the Ombudsman recommendation, and they're not held accountable for that, then it continues, and they're like, oh, we don't have to listen to the Ombudsman anymore. So, and who plays a role where that's concerned? The people. So if you see we have leadership that are not making changes that in the betterment of our society, we have to hold them accountable, irrespective of who they be. My cousin, my uncle, my former boss, it does not matter. We have to hold them accountable, because again, that same system will come and fall down right on you next time.
All right. So I
love that.
Yes, I love it. I'm going to
Love
do
it.
a round, because we have 10 minutes left, probably 8 now. But when we do the round, then you're able to share. But I do want to place some emphasis on what you said, because you said a lot, and we're happy that we felt the passion come out, because we know you wasn't getting an opportunity to come in, but it came in the right time. Yes, indeed, I have that written down as well, and it was a question to share here, but we know, and the audience out there, this is a start or a continuation, meaning that we have other organizations who's busy doing things, and just how we are here and we're supporting each other, we will continue to support each other. So by going to their initiatives when they have it as well. So this, you can never do in 2 hours everything that you want to do. But I do want to say that I had the question, if it is your sister or your brother, if you warned them before and they are not, taking heed to what you're saying, I know that you are sexually or you are emotionally, physically, psychologically abusing this person or persons or your position. Do you report it? Should you? I know it's a hard question because your brother, it's your sister, it's your cousin. I give Mr. Pantaflet that one and then we go to the round.
I was just making notes. I think the discussion is fruitful. Important is that we definitely follow up. Our experience has been that we talk a lot and then after a while, that's very quiet. Again, awareness is key. Information is key. And as Dr. Boston asked me before I accepted to be on this panel, the issue of laws. This issue of sexual harassment must be criminalized. It must be done because, as I said, we are part of the kingdom and the Dutch have it, so I do too. I will leave that for now because there are other speakers there and I know time is short, so again, thank you very much for inviting me and let us have follow-up sessions.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Pantaflet. I'll go by you, we go this way.
Okay, so what I would like to say is thank you so much for continuing this discussion and for having us here and for having inviting the Ombudsman to the table to have this very important discussion. I would just like to reiterate that the Ombudsman is an institution that is there when your relationship with government has a break, your communication, whatever it is, has a break. We do have a procedure. I won't be able to go into it right now, but if you have any questions, you come to us. Even if it's not a government matter, oftentimes we do refer people. I would like teachers to know that the school boards do fall under the jurisdiction of the Ombudsman, so you can also come to the Ombudsman for these issues. We absolutely do our best to uphold government, not only government, but yeah, government standards and policies, and we do our best to assist and we refer when necessary. So please, you have more power than you think you do, and together we will try to find a way to speak up, and we are here for you.
All right, Ms. Asha.
Well, it was a very active discussion today, and I hope that this can continue, especially because a lot of people speaking about certain parts of this abuse is like taboo. They try to hide and bury it, but with the awareness and education, we will be able in the future to really put, let's say, dot the I's and cross the T's and have a more safer work environment where everybody can be, how we would say, progressive and can find their own space and happiness in the workforce instead of being, by this challenge that they are being in a position where they're not happy and they have to actually give up a lot of what might be their ambition, their job and their future because of that situation. So we do hope that by speaking out about these things that we can also, let's say a person evaluate themselves and realize, oh, well, I'm abusive, that they also, the persons can make that change in their behavior too in the workplace so that it can go 2 ways.
Yes, indeed.
Okay?
So they can work on themselves
Yes.
as well.
As what's her name said in a book, that you can
Ms. Maynard,
evaluate yourself
yes.
as Brenda Maynard said.
Yes.
Okay?
Anita?
Yes, first of all, thank you. This was right up my alley. So it was really exciting for me, the discussion. And I look at my fellow panelists, and especially Cassandra and Aishira. Ms. Elshot, you're always there, so I'm not even going to single you out. I think the work has just begun, and we know coming out of the Labor Symposium, we heard a lot of things that we have to work on, make a difference, make a change. And as WICSU PSU, we are working on that. So as Ms. Cecilia said, she reached out to me and we do have a roadmap that we need to map moving forward. Cassandra's already in the nest, so yeah, we are going to work together and making this vision become a reality, and probably partner with others just like yourself, and seeing how we can move this forward in a positive manner, because we didn't even start putting the first block to the foundation for all of the issues that are out there. We have not touched them. I asked you a couple minutes ago for a response to what Miss Cecilia said, and she said if you see that the first person came and made a report but there wasn't a response, still report. And I have to tell you that that is what happened in certain instances, and the downside of it is that the person that was the one main culprit got a promotion while the broken hearts were there and the mental abuse started. However, let that not be a deterrent, because I know they're listening. Let that not be a deterrent. We are working on getting or seeing light at the end of the tunnel. It will not happen today for tomorrow, but at the least we have started to plant the seed, and I can promise, as much as I can, I will work on it. I look at you, Aishita, look at you, Cassie, and whomever else wants to come on board, Dr. Boston, for us to make this a reality. And you said it right, we talk a lot, but we don't talk. We act. And to all the workers out there, security is always to be unionized. When I started working government 30 years ago, I was not given the option to join a union. I was given the form to join the union. And from then to now, 30 years later, I'm still part of the union. Is it always the way you want it to be? Do you always have the representation that you think you should have? No, but your union is as strong as you are. So the union is not the name, the union is you. So I would leave it there, and I would say there's always a way for you to report, and a good union is a confidential union. I will just keep that there.
Very good.
Thank you.
I would also like to say thank you for the opportunity to be part of this panel. I would like to add one thing. When all what is going on, what we spoke about, is displayed, there's a group of persons, and I'm talking about teenagers, I'm talking about young adults, who experience this. So they might not have the pain, but they might emulate the behavior. They might see what's wrong and what's right, and see that nothing is happening. And I believe that when youngsters are in school, they should be trained. They should be aware of these things that are happening. There should be discussion. There should be talks about it, so that when they get older, when they mature, they will know how to go about it. We have to make sure that the next generation, if I look around here, I'm not even going to say my age, but, but when I look around here, I'm not seeing 20-year-olds. And it's not only here, no, it's not a discredit. It's we have to get the youth more involved. We have to, because 20 years down the line, you might be my you know? So we have to work hard, work on the youth, involve them as much as possible. That's what I would like to say.
Yes, indeed. I agree. Ms. Richardson, we're down to you now.
Yeah, Dr. Boston, Dr. Pierre, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm very passionate about these subjects. Silence, I just want to end with silence and then encouraging to speak up. Silence is also a part of our colonial legacy. It was used as a way to protect us, right? To protect ourselves, to protect our loved ones, so that we could escape wrath. Silence now, it's not needed. And so we also have to recognize why we do it, where it comes from. It doesn't help that, of course, we don't have the proper structures with the proper understanding and the empathy that has to go with that. A colonial history is an unempathetic history. We need to build empathy within our society again. Victim support services, even though our clientele must come from the police and the prosecutor's office, I always leave a door open, or you can get a phone call or a Facebook message. If this is something that ails you, and I've spoken to many people that have had experiences of sexual abuse and sexual assault, and it weighs on people for years. Speak. Even if you don't think that there is a criminal act at the end of the road, speak, because it is for you, for your freedom. So even if your union is very confidential, you also have us there, right? As in Victim Support Services. You have our Facebook, our number will be on the screen, where it is. Please do not hesitate, send us a text message if you need to just unburden yourself. And then also too, a practical way, like Ashira was talking about, is to collect that information. So my biggest wonderful thing right now is that I'm riding high on is that I got a database. So I'm collecting that information just from us, like what kinds of issues that we're seeing, sexual assault and domestic violence, of course, obviously. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much to every one of you that's here. This happened the exact way, and I told this to Miss Cassandra, we had our moment, the way that God had it planned for me. I have to say that. My mother also gave me a verse before I came here, and I didn't get to pull it up, because she said, if persons are scared to speak up, tell them to read 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7. Mommy, I didn't get to look it up, but if somebody puts it in the chat or so, I know I did my part, because my mother told me to make sure I tell them to have that strength, because God gave it to you. But every single one of you that's here today had to be right here. So I thank you. I thank Miss Brenda Maynard as well. And like you said, we're only touching the surface here. And we intend to keep pushing. So we're going to continue. Let me thank a few persons, our support team in the chat. So we have the Ombudsman office, even though they're here with us, they're also in the chat. We have Dr. Thomas from Turning Point. We have Miss Narissa. I always don't get her last name. That is Miss Aurelie's daughter. Narissa. Well, she's not Boyran, but yes, Ellis. Yeah, she's not last name. Okay, but
we don't have last name.
No. I have her name, but Miss Narissa, our lawyer that we have in there, and all the students from the University of St. Martin that did projects on vulnerable groups, especially those that did it on abusive leadership. Your educator, your teacher, thank you for being here today. All teachers in the schools, all persons on your membership, and all membership from all the schools and so forth. We thank everyone for being here. This is Klein Foundation, Education Matters. This is the first time we're in a studio, so tell us the name of the studio since come on.
SYM.
SYM Studio. Thank you for having us. You did a wonderful job.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.